What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Leading Off, the Fantasy Pros Baseball Podcast. We are presented by bet365. Bet $5, get 150 in bonus bets when you use that promo code Leading Off with our friends over at bet365. There's no Welsh, there's no Joe Pisapia, but Casey Baba and myself, Joe Orico, are back here on this Monday leading off. We're supposed to have Welsh on, but that's what happens this time of year when football gets crazy. Welsh is famous now. He's got to do the football shows. But that's why Bubba and myself are here to take you through everything that's going on, talk about the latest news, talk some injury updates, bets, home run calls, all that great stuff. Bubba, how are you doing on this fine Monday?
I'm doing great. It's always a pleasure, as usual, talking baseball with you and keep going. 3 weeks left in the baseball season, so no who's counting. But as we're rolling here and that other game takes place and takes everybody's attention away, we still get cracking here for daily baseball for us.
Yeah, I think we're down to the final. I guess there's 3 weeks left, 3 shows a week. We're down to the final 9 leading offs of the season. So make sure you guys are subscribed to the show, whether it is on the podcast side or the YouTube side. Would really appreciate any help you guys can give us here as football starts to take over, but we are still going to be having baseball content come at you throughout the offseason. So make sure you guys are signed up for everything, podcast, YouTube, and all that great stuff. We are going to start with the headlines, and we're going to keep it the way we usually do here, but we're going to start off with some rather tough news, and it's Justin Verlander just getting destroyed again. 8 earned runs over 3 innings against the Diamondbacks. Couple of home runs. He allowed 8 hits, did not record a strikeout. What we've seen from him in 14 games this season has been awful. A 5.30 ERA, a 1.38 whip, the worst strikeout and walk rates that he's had in 10 years. Is Verlander finished, Bubba? Is there any hope that he can kind of come back and give us any old Verlander type of performances, or is it just kind of he's going to go out the back door, and this is kind of how his career is going to end?
I think this is kind of where we're headed. You might get a start here and there, but velocity is not what it once was. Doesn't go deep into games. We saw this last year before he got hurt. Things were slowing down. He still was serviceable, still could get strikeouts from time to time, but he's now a pitcher, not a thrower. He still was a pitcher before, but you know what I mean? When you're still pumping high 90s in the 7th or 8th inning, that's a thrower a lot of the time. But Verlander's just getting old. Father Time is undefeated in these situations, and it's a shame because he is one of the best pitchers of most of our generations. He's very, very good. He's up there in the probably, I'll say top 10, potentially top 5, depending on who you are. But I think this is about the end of it. I wanted nothing to do with him when he was coming off the IL. I rooted for him, but it's like, nah, I'm going to pass on this one and see where it goes. I'm quietly, sadly, not surprised by what's taking place. Not that I think Pavin Smith was going to be like the guy that put him to his grave. No, but I thought something like this could happen.
It's crazy. I mean, Pavin Smith, we'll mention him later, just like one of the games of the season for anybody. But Verlander, I don't know what to expect from him going forward because he's going to be 42 years old by the start of next season. He has a February birthday.
Crying out loud. He's older than me. That says a lot, people.
That is pretty old. No, I'm just playing with you, Bubba. I just don't know if we can really trust him going to his age 42 season. He is a player option. I feel like he's going to pick that up because I don't know what kind of deal he's going to get on the market, but I can't really see myself drafting Verlander unless we're talking about if he falls to like the last round and then you say, okay, maybe I'll take a chance on him here. But just that name value alone, I feel like he won't fall as far as he should given the performances we've seen. Any chance you have any interest in Verlander at a given price next year or just a full fade?
I'm just a full fade. He'd have to be post 250, like one of your last round picks, essentially, to keep interest from me. So I'm pretty positive I'll be out on the Verlander show.
I think that's kind of the end, but of course, like you mentioned, he's one of the best pitchers of the generation. He's going to the Hall of Fame. It's sad to see it kind of go out like this. I always figured he would end with like a 2.7 ERA and come third in Cy Young, like a David Ortiz type of send-off year. I don't know why I figured that would be what would happen for Verlander, but it doesn't look like we're going to get that. He's kind of just stuck around for a little bit too long at this point. 42 is just you're pushing it if you're still trying to be a major league player at 42. Jamie Moyer, he's not coming back through that door anytime soon. Let's talk about Julio Rodriguez. 6 hits over the weekend in St. Louis. He's 17 for his last 54 over the last couple of weeks. That's a .315 batting average, 3 home runs, 3 stolen bases. It obviously hasn't been great. It's been a pretty miserable season as a whole for Julio, and yet he's like a top 150 player overall. So I've really been struggling because as the season goes on, we start to think about next year's draft targets, and there's been some early drafts that we've broken down already. Do you think there's a chance Julio gets himself back into the first round? Like, there's a chance he goes 20-20 in a miserable season. We know that he can go 30-30, if not 40-40. So any chance that Julio gets into the top 15 next year?
Yeah, wouldn't shock me. He went 13th in our 2 early DC we did a couple weeks back. So there's still a lot of love for him. Never hurts to have a strong finish to the season to get people excited. Now the back end of that draft is loaded between the end of the first round, early second round. I think there's a lot of moving pieces there that'll change from draft to draft, but a strong finish from Julio will remind people of how talented he really is. I think he might have been hurt quite a bit this season, more than let on, because he had the little IL stint and everything came back quicker than most expected, so on and so forth. Maybe he's healthy, maybe he's not, but the finish is strong, so I think he'll find his way back into the first round.
The power hasn't really, 14 home runs the whole season, but a part of, I think, the struggle in terms of the overall stat line has also been just how bad the team has been around him. 49 ribbies, 60 runs scored. Yes, part of that is on Julio, but the Mariners have been historically bad, and that definitely has not helped things out. I feel like if he's still sitting there at the beginning of the second round, if I can pair him with like a Tatis, a Carroll, maybe a Tucker, I feel like I'm going to do it. I just don't know if I really want to take that chance of letting him slip by, because we know that he's capable of giving you a top 5 season. And slowly but surely, he is kind of getting back to that. We have seen old Julio at times this year, but yeah, 14 homers, 21 steals, 262. I wouldn't fault anybody for not wanting to take him in the first round, but we're kind of getting back to there, especially if he finishes really hot. I could see him getting there on a consistent basis. Let's talk Jack Flaherty. Dominant outing, which has kind of become what we've been used to this season. 7 1/3 shutout ball with 6 strikeouts against the Guardians. He allowed just 4 hits. For the season as a whole, Jack Flaherty's done some amazing things, and I want to shout out your co-host, Ryan Bloomfield, who was one of the people I heard speaking loudest about Jack Flaherty in the preseason. A 2.86 ERA, a 1.01 whip. He is second among all qualified starters in strikeout minus walk rate and second in Sierra. I don't know what to do with him for next season, though, because we've seen 2 good years from Flaherty out of like 7. Are you going to trust him heading into next year? Because I think at this point, like, he's obviously somebody I trust implicitly this season. But once the year changes over, you never really know what's going to happen after a 6-month layoff. Is Flaherty somebody that can be trusted as an SP1 or an SP2 next season, you think?
I think as an SP2 potentially. I'm terrified of SP1 with him. He's got quite the injury history. Like, there's no denying that. And even the back was an issue off and on this season. So there are some of those lingering concerns. We've seen him pitch really well before when he's been healthy with the Cardinals. We've also seen the opposite side of that spectrum, which we could probably get at any moment. So, and the free agent, where's he going to land? That's a big piece of the puzzle as well. I think you could draft him as an SP2. Like, in a perfect world, I'd like SP3. He won't be there as an SP3. He'll be gone before that. So if you're a believer in what he's doing, which this is who he can be if he stays healthy, there's no denying that, then he is worthy of an SP2. It's just there is a lot of risk with one of your top-end fantasy pitchers if you take the chance.
Yeah, location is going to be big. If he goes back to the Dodgers, that'll obviously be probably the best case scenario.
I hate it. So, yeah, go for it.
I was a Giants fan, if you guys weren't aware, but that statement probably does make you aware of it. I don't know if I'm going to want to, like, I've been a huge fan of his, but I don't know if I really want to touch him where he's probably going to be going, which is top 50, top 75 picks overall, probably. It makes me nervous. It really does. I feel like I'm probably going to do it once or twice because we are volume players. Bubba and I, we're going to probably do, how many teams do you have this year? 20 or so? 15, 20?
Yeah, it's like 20-ish.
Something like that.
We're just going to go with that. Just keep it peace, 20-ish.
So we'll have 1 or 2 shares maybe. But
I will have some Flaherty. Yes, you are correct.
Yeah. Just investing consistently as an SP1, SP2. You're going to need some security around him. You're going to need a Logan Webb, a George Kirby, or somebody who can really eat a lot of innings. And that's a pretty sure thing if you are going to take that chance pretty early on Flaherty. Moving on to Michael Wacha, who, this is the 3rd straight year, Bubba, where he's been really, really good. It was 7 innings of shutout ball yesterday. Not a cupcake matchup either against the Twins. He struck out 7, allowed just 4 hits, 3.34 ERA, 1.18 whip. Considering where people drafted him, he's a huge, huge win this season. Is he somebody now that, like, after 3 straight years of roughly a 3.5 ERA, can we say that Wacha's trustable as like an SP3 and SP4? The numbers below the surface are not great. That's why I kind of question it. The strikeouts aren't amazing. The ERA estimators leave something to be desired. How much do you trust Michael Wacha going forward?
I trust him quite a bit. Talked about him on the first pitch pod last night that this start was amazing. It's just the consistency he brings. You mentioned 3 straight years. I thought the dude was like Adam Wainwright's age. He's 33 years old. He's not even that old yet. Like, there's a lot to be had with Wacha. And one thing I found very, very impressive to me, just to give it the big example of his consistency of late, he has allowed 3 earned runs or less in 19 of his last 20 starts. That is
Wow.
like something you can just trust. Now it's 99 Ks and 113 innings. So yeah, that's still not bad. That's not bad, but it's not like the K per inning type guys are better that you want. At the same time, man, if your first 2 pitchers are just like Wheeler and like Cease or somebody that strikes out everybody, and then you bring this ratio machine behind you that's actually getting wins also because he's pitching
Yeah.
deep into games. Like, and I could have probably gone farther. It's probably like 27 of like 29 starts or something, but 19 of his last 23 runs or less. That is a model of consistency that should not be ignored. And I just wanted to give him his props. And I'm glad he was on the outline today because a lot of us, I think, just look at him and go, that's Walker. He's boring, which he is. He's very boring. There's no denying that. But when it comes to fantasy, boring can be beautiful. And this is very beautiful.
Yeah, sometimes we get caught up in the hot new toy. Oh, I got to take this guy in the second round and he's going to win my league or whatever. A lot of the time it is those boring players. Seth Lugo, another guy was a boring guy coming into the year. He's going to win a lot of leagues just because of that late price really returning great value. And it's the same thing with Waka. It's not always the guys that get pushed up that win your leagues, right? It's a lot of the time it's those guys going between 100 and pick 200 or so, even later, that can really return this crazy value like Waka has. And I feel like going into next year, he'll kind of be a fade again. People are going to just do what I did. Say, okay, the strikeouts aren't great. The XFIPs and Sierras of the world are all right, but they're not amazing. And he might be somebody where you can get him at a bit of a discount. And like Bubba said, pretty safe in terms of the ratios if you got your strikeouts squared away. Speaking of strikeouts squared away, let's talk Edward Cabrera. 7 innings against the Phillies yesterday, 6 strikeouts. I don't know what to make of Edward Cabrera as usual because we see starts like this against a team like the Phillies, but we also see hot garbage from him a lot of the time. And the inconsistency is really what makes him almost impossible to use. I've always been a big fan of Edward Cabrera. There's been some positive signs this season, but is there any way we can trust him at this point? I feel like I want to see that command get a lot better, but what are your thoughts on Edward Cabrera going forward, Bubba?
This is the problem with him is the talent is undeniable. The consistency is not. The command is not. Well, what we saw in this start was 1 walk, 2 walks, something like that over 7 innings. The last 4 starts, it's been 3 runs or less for Edward Cabrera with like 20 Ks over 23 innings, but 8 walks. So pick your poison there. But we have seen signs of life of late. It's one of those guys it's worth gambling on late in drafts if you want to. Streams are like he always looks to be a good stream, but the headache is there because the opposite side can take place as we've seen. But the talent's undeniable. And so when we see this kind of stuff, it reels you back in every time. I'll still be interested. I'll have a few shares, but it's just one of those things. Like, because if he ever figures it out command-wise, dude's going to be ridiculous. It's just we haven't seen that yet.
He could have like a Dylan Cease type of career potentially where you see these 30-10 guys, 30% strikeout rate, 10% walk rate, where the talent's there, and it's just a matter of figuring out that command. And I feel like he could reach those kind of Dylan Cease levels if you had a 7 or 8% walk rate, but that's asking a lot at this point in time. Still going to be interested. I'll always be interested in Edward Cabrera because he's just one of those guys for me. It's kind of like Tyler McGill. I don't know why. There's something about them, certain pitchers that you just kind of get interested in. He's one of them for me, but the inconsistency is still a problem at this point. Let's talk about a couple hitters starting in my neck of the woods in Toronto. Spencer Horwitz had a hell of a weekend. He went 6 for 7 with 3 homers, 4 runs scored, and 5 ribbies. He's been a top 75 player over the last month, hitting .270, 18 runs and 14 RBIs with 7 homers. I've really become more interested in Spencer Horwitz. I didn't think there was all that much there really earlier on, but he hits the ball very hard. He's playing most of the time. He's usually in the 3rd to 5th spot in the Blue Jays order. What's your interest level rest of season and also heading into next year? Is Horwitz going to be somebody that you're targeting as a middle corner infield guy?
I'm very interested. I know like in DCs, I took some late shares of him because we saw the bat skills were great. It was just $1 million question of where's he going to play. I think it was util only also and to start the season in NPC. But he's getting the playing time. It's looking good. You're the Jays guy. Is that something we can expect next year? If that's the case, I'm interested as a late round pick at least. I'm not going to target him as like my starting first baseman, but he's got corner infield viability. He's a good bench bat. I just don't know what the playing time looks like for sure.
For the Blue Jays, I don't know that any spot on the roster outside of first base with Vlad is really guaranteed to anybody next year. Varsho is going to be around. Kirk's probably going to be around. There's going to be a lot of playing time, though. And considering what Horwitz has done, he can play second. He can play first. I mean, he has pretty good plate skills, 10% walk rate, 17 on the strikeout rate. He hits the ball pretty hard. I think he's going to be around. I think he's going to be somebody that does have some interest. His WRC plus after half a season is 135. It's a lot better than you'd probably expect. I'm going to have some interest here. You also have to acknowledge that the Blue Jays lineup is going to probably be a bit of a dumpster fire next season, so counting stats going to be a little bit tricky. I don't expect many stolen bases, but just as a corner to middle infield option at pick 250 or so in the draft, like he's going to be pretty interesting if he even gets that far, because his recent stretch might push him up a little bit. One more guy to talk about here in the headlines, and that's Cedric Mullins. He had a home run over the weekend against the Rays, and it's kind of snuck up on me that he's turned the season around over the last month, hitting .302 with 3 homers and 7 stolen bases. As a whole, it's been pretty inconsistent, and I do feel like eventually he'll be pushed out of playing time just based on all the youngsters that got to fit into the lineup there. But it hasn't been a terrible season for Mullins. 15 homers, 26 stolen bases, only hitting .234. But generally speaking, it hasn't been a terrible year for him. It's been a better year than last year. What are your thoughts heading into next season? Is he going to have a starting everyday role in Baltimore? Are we reaching the point where he might get pushed out? Are you going to have any interest in drafting him, essentially?
I'll probably be out unless he drops quite a bit because he was already platooning this year. Feels like he's been the odd man out at times, but now and then he starts producing again, gets some more reps, then struggles and gets kind of pushed away again. I feel like there are enough options in that Orioles system to move Cedric out of the way. That's kind of where I'd be leaning at this point in time. So I'd be out on Cedric for now unless we get some new news that all of a sudden they've regained love with Cedric Mullins and he's back in action for him.
Maybe that price falls pretty far. Maybe we hear he's getting a regular role. But yeah, I feel like at this point, the bloom is off the rose. He's not the 30-30 guy he was a couple years ago. He could still have some value, but it would have to come at a pretty discounted price. Like if he's in the top 150 picks or so, I couldn't do it. If we're talking about like pick 200 or something like that, I could probably be talked into it. Let's talk about a couple of rookies in the rookie section here. Trey Sweeney, who was one of the pieces acquired for Jack Flaherty at the deadline. Big game, 4 for 4 with a combo meal, couple runs, couple ribbies. Hasn't been so great, Bubba. Is there any interest here for deeper leagues down the stretch for Trey Sweeney, or is something you want to just wait for next year on?
I'm probably waiting until next year. I've brought him up in FAB from time to time in deep leagues, like you're saying. There are a lot of middle infield options that have popped up over the last month or so that kind of go over the top of Sweeney, but the skills are there. He's hit a couple home runs over the last week, so that's good to see. But the consistency, like you mentioned, has not been there. So I'm probably more excited about Sweeney for 2025. But depending on your format, he is going to be viable most likely.
Yeah, I think so as well. I kind of undersold the Tigers' return there. I just think I compared it directly with like the Kikuchi package, and it didn't seem like they really got enough back considering how good Flaherty had been. But it looks like they could have a couple of decent pieces here with Sweeney being among them. Connor Norby is another guy I want to talk about in the rookie. I think he's been more valuable over about 20 games than Trevor Rogers was for the entire season. He had 3 home runs, drove in 7 against the Phillies over the weekend. As a Marlin, he has 1,043 OPS, 6 home runs in 18 games. There are some numbers, however, below the surface that aren't really that great. Average exit velocity, 86 miles an hour, 38% hard hit rate. He's striking out 30% of the time, but he's got a 14% barrel rate. There are things that I like, but it's kind of a mixed package in terms of the analysis because it's a bad park, it's a bad team, but he's looked really, really good. What's your interest level in Connor Norby here for the final 3 weeks? And also, again, to kind of keep the theme going, are you going to have any interest heading into 2025?
For the final 3 weeks, I want him everywhere I can. I'm very excited about what we're seeing from him. Young player, getting some run, and he seems to get better. He even had a slump at one point, and we've seen a break out of that. He's got a 7-game hitting streak starting off Monday here, so that's pretty promising. So I am loving that, and in 2025, I want him a lot. You're going to join me later today on Bench with Bubba to kind of talk about the early 2025 draft. And Norby wasn't picked, and I was actually thinking over the weekend, seeing his stat line, that I'm like, Norby might be one of my top options coming back in the 12th round when we kick things off because I need a second baseman. And the fact he'll be second base, third base. Well, next year he might be third base only in NFBC. Let's keep in mind in that. But for the rest of the season here, second base, third base, I love Connor Norby. And this is a guy I'm very excited about going into the next season.
Something else to keep in mind is that for this week, they're facing a bunch of lefties, and he destroys left-handed pitching. So if you're looking even for just a short-term hitting stream, Connor Norby is one of the top options that you can find. Still available in a lot of leagues, too. Just taking a look at Yahoo. Norby is on, what are we talking about here? 56% of roster. So a bit of a toss-up, but you'll probably can find him if it's a bit of a shallower format. And I think he is worth starting in a lot of cases. Let's go to the 3 up and 3 down. Pavin Smith, who we mentioned earlier, one of the games of the season, 3 home runs, 8 driven in. If you played him in DFS or if you happen to say, okay, let's just stream Pavin Smith today, what's the worst that can happen? You did very well for yourself. A funny thing that I also learned yesterday, just going through Fangraphs, of anybody who has thrown a pitch this year, Pavin Smith has the best stuff plus at 206. It's because of the obscure nature of the delivery or something, I'm sure. It was one inning. But yeah, the two-way player coming out of nowhere is Pavin Smith out there in Arizona. Sticking in Arizona, Eugenio Suarez, 4 for 5 with a home run, 4 runs scored, a couple driven in. He's been incredible. Like, he has gotten to the point where he's like a top 90 or 80 player overall for the season after he did essentially nothing for the first half. He's just been on fire. And then Jarrett Jones, 7 innings of 2-run ball with 9 strikeouts against Washington. He looked very, very good yesterday. Bubba, among this group, Pavin Smith, Suarez, Jarrett Jones, any major thoughts rest of season here on this group?
It's Eugenio Suarez for me. Like, I had him dead to rights. I know I was not alone at one point. I'm like, Jordan Lawler's about to get called up. Eugenio's going to get DFA'd. He's been that bad. And then Lawler gets hurt yet again. And then Eugenio finds the fountain of youth. And we thought, okay, it's a couple weeks. It hasn't stopped. Like, the dude's just mashing everywhere. And I'm very thankful I grabbed a couple shares when I could, because it's been a beautiful thing to see.
Man, I wish I did. I wish I did. He has been, I mean, the term league winner is thrown around a lot. But if you saw Suarez sitting on your waiver wire and you picked him up right when this was getting going, there's a good chance you're looking pretty good right now. And you're still listening to the show because you are still in the hunt. Going to the 3 down, Caden Dana, Angels rookie pitcher. Not good stuff. 5 earned runs and 7 hits over 1 inning. Miles Michaelis, if you thought about streaming him in against the weak Seattle Mariners, your season could be over because of it. 2 innings, 6-run ball with 9 hits allowed. He did strike out 3 for all the good it did you, but not good stuff for Michaelis. And then finally, Noelvi Marte, 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts. Bubba, I don't know what to make of Noelvi Marte, but coming off the PED suspension, he's hitting a $199, 4 homers, 6 stolen bases. Are we starting to think that maybe there was some impact of the PEDs that now he's feeling without it? I mean, I don't want to read too much into it because he was such a great prospect from such a young age. I don't think that he was juicing in high school necessarily, but what's the impact there and what does it mean towards your future evaluation of Marte? I mean, he's not as shiny of a toy as he would have been about a year ago, but are we out on him at this point?
I think he's going to be a very intriguing value next season because I think a lot of people are going to be out on him. I'm going to kind of chalk this one up to a lost season between the suspension and everything else. He's young. I don't think the talent just disappeared. Now, could it have been steroid involved? Potentially. Like, that's definitely an option, but I still think he's a pretty darn good ball player. So I think I'm willing to chalk this one up to just a lot going on in a young man's head for this season and take the value of it in 2025.
I think you're probably right. Yeah, the price is going to be so cheap, especially in the casual, home leagues, ESPN, Yahoo leagues. He might not get drafted a lot of the time. Last couple rounds, I don't mind taking a chance on him in that ballpark, a year older, et cetera, et cetera. Things could turn around for him, but man, has it been ugly. Rest of season, is there any need to roster him, you think?
No, I dropped him in a lot of places already. So yeah. I think you can wait for 2025 when it comes to Noelvi Marte.
That's totally fair. Let's move on to the injury updates. Finally, Kyle Tucker made his return to the Astros lineup after 3 months plus being out. I think it ended up being more than 3 months. It was like 100+ days he missed. He was DHing both games over the weekend. Not much to do here other than put him back into your lineups and hope that he can kind of make up for lost time. Not going to happen all the way, but hopefully he can hit a few home runs and steal a few bases down the stretch for you. Luis Castillo had to leave his start early on Sunday due to a hamstring injury. He's going to undergo some testing today. Bubba, what's your early concern level here for Luis Castillo? Is he going into weekly lineups for you?
I think he's going to the IL. That's my weekly concern. So I think his season's done, essentially, when it comes to fantasy. Really? Okay. And they're just doing the imaging to make sure that it's that kind of situation. But leaving a game, hamstring, pitcher, we've seen this all season long. It's at least a minimum 15 days.
Yeah, and at that point, I mean, 15 days from now is the 24th of September. Season ends on the 29th. Yeah. Maybe you get one start, but I mean, the Mariners they're essentially toast at this point. I don't think there's really much of a chance for them. Certainly the division, I think, is pretty much done. What is it? They're 4.5 back in the wild card. They're 3.5. So maybe not fully done, but this is definitely a fatal blow for them if they have to lose Castillo for too long. Although pitching is a strength for them, but I don't think this is going to bode too well going forward for the Mariners. Teoscar Hernandez avoided a serious injury after taking a Matt Boyd slider off of his foot on Friday. All scans came back negative, so that is a positive. I saw a couple questions about him in the chat, but it looks like he's going to be okay. Maybe we get a day off or two, but avoided anything too serious there. Something interesting, and we hadn't really mentioned him on this show, but Trevor Story came off of the IL over the weekend. He went 2 for 7 in his first couple of games back. What's your interest level in Trevor Story? Are you seeing him on the waiver wire? Are you picking him up?
Very interested. I talked about him with Bubba and Bloom last week, and he was playing really well in rehab. Supposed to come back Friday or Saturday. Came back Saturday. Looks good. I'd be very, very intrigued going forward the rest of the season.
I wonder if we'll ever see Story get back to old Colorado Trevor Story. I kind of doubt it, but that doesn't mean he can't have value in a top 5 lineup in a real hitter's park. It could be a really interesting piece there for you if you are looking for. Is he just second base eligible at this point, or is he shortstop eligible in a lot of cases? I think he's just shortstop on Yahoo, but he did have second base for a while, didn't he?
Yeah, I think it's shortstop. Maybe I know he's playing shortstop when he came back. Right now, they moved Ceden Rafaela to second, so
Okay.
it should be shortstop for sure. Maybe a little second base depending on your formats.
Yeah, maybe it was when Bogarts was there. He had second base eligibility or something like that. Maybe I'm just caught in a different year at this point. Let's talk.
If he's shortstop only on Yahoo, it's pretty much where he's going to be everywhere else.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, that's a fair point. Yahoo, all you got to do is, fall over second base, and they'll give you second base eligibility. Jeff McNeil is going to miss the remainder of the season. We talked about this last week. Everybody getting hit by pitches and injuries coming all over the place. Jeff McNeil, fractured wrist, so he is done for the season. It's a shame because he'd actually really turned his year around in the second half. He'd been a nice play for deeper leagues, but not looking great for him at this point. Obviously, he's done for the year. Gavin Stone also went on the IL. He was scratched from his start. That was supposed to happen over the weekend with shoulder inflammation. Not good, Bubba. I guess Gavin Stone is probably in the same boat as Luis Castillo here, likely done for the year.
Yep, you can move on from Gavin Stone. That's for darn sure.
Just looking at the Dodgers IL rotation is actually insane because all the jokes are usually like, okay, you could make a rotation out of who they got on the IL. You could make 2 rotations out of who they have on the IL. Glasnow, Gonsolin, Kershaw, May, River Ryan, Emmett Sheehan, Gavin Stone, and Yoshinobu Yamamoto are all on the injured list. I don't even know. Yeah. Is there anything? I mean, people have talked about how the Dodgers can be a little reckless maybe or something, and they cause these pitching injuries. I haven't dug into that at all. Is there any truth to that the Dodgers maybe cause some of these injuries, or is that just nonsense, you think?
I know Yamamoto coming over from Japan. Kershaw's old. Glasnow from Tampa. There are a lot of those guys that were from their system, though. The Stones, the Sheehan's, the Ryans. Like, there's something there. So there's probably a little bit of yes, a little bit of no. I'm not going to go full accusatory. I think the Rays are more to blame for their issues than the Dodgers are for theirs. But there is something to team context with certain injuries for sure.
Something I want to dig into a bit in the offseason too is usage, not in-game usage, but how teams prepare. I think this is like an Eno question probably, but like the behind-the-scenes strain that goes into pitching development. Our team, like in terms of how many pitches guys throw in warm-ups, how many pitches they throw on off days. I feel like Eno, there's probably an article out there or something, but it's not just the in-game stuff that impacts a pitcher, obviously. Like that's the thing that gets the most press, and we see it. But that's 100 pitches. The guy's throwing tons of pitches throughout the week. And I wonder how much the actual training part of it actually impacts what happens to pitchers. I don't know. Again, that's probably a question for Eno or somebody a lot smarter than us, but something I want to dig into over the course of the offseason a little bit. A couple of more pitchers, and then we'll move on. Max Scherzer had a great rehab outing. It was 4 scoreless innings, striking out 8. There was some talk he was pulled with a perfect game or something like that. I saw this tweet go out, and I was like, I don't think Max Scherzer gives a crap if he throws a perfect game in the minors. It would be a footnote on his resume at best. He could return this week for Texas. At this point, I guess Scherzer's going into our lineups right when he comes back because we don't have a lot of time. But is he, though? Like, are you at all concerned about starting Scherzer in his first time back on the mound?
Nope. If he's good to go, I'm good to go. He could re-aggravate it in one pitch. I'm not naive to that, but if he's good enough to pitch, I'm good enough to take the results he's going to bring with it. So Scherzer will go right back in the lineup for me.
I think I agree, and the same thing can be said about Jacob deGrom, who we mentioned last week. Looks like his season debut is coming at some point this week. The Rangers have Arizona and Seattle. I think based on everything, we would all prefer that it comes against Seattle because Arizona's been a great offense, but I mean, it's Jacob deGrom, right? If he's facing the 27 Yankees, we're probably putting him in our lineups. I don't think there's any case where you wouldn't start Jacob deGrom, right? There's no situation where you'd want to bench him at all.
No, man, you'd have to have one heck of a pitching staff to not need to start Jacob deGrom at this point in the season. So, yeah, deGrom it is for me.
I think there's probably, unless it's like an 8-team league, like you said, you just have a loaded staff and you don't need to take the chance, then maybe don't. But I think in most cases here, you're pretty safe putting Jacob deGrom back into your lineups. Bubba, it's time where we talk about the best bets of the day, again, presented by our friends over at bet365. Use that promo code, guys. $5 gets you 150 in bonus bets with that promo code leading off. Bubba, what do you have for us today on the betting side?
Well, I'm not a big fan, small slate, but we're attacking Walker Buehler, folks. I know there's a question in the chat that asked if we are trusting Buehler. I am not. Give me Pete Crow Armstrong over half a run for plus 165 odds. Used that one last week, and it paid off. Runs are tough, but I think there's some offense to be had here. And Cody Bellinger coming back to LA over 1.5 total bases at plus 145. I almost took Cody as my home run call of the day just for fun. And then we'll stick with Chicago. We'll go with the White Sox taking on Cantillo of Cleveland, who is horrible, 7+ ERA. Give me Lou Bob over 1.5 total bases at plus 125, coming off a big Sunday game. So I'll take those three at plus 125 or better odds.
I like it. Bubba is the plus money man. Friday, how did you do on Friday, Bubba? I had a bit of a tough Friday.
I think Friday was 1 and 2 or so. It wasn't a good Friday. Swept Wednesday. Friday wasn't so great.
Wednesday, we were on fire. Friday, I think I was 1 and 2 as well. So we're getting back on the horse today. And that's why I'm not going too crazy with my picks. I'm going with some favorites, and we're starting off with Paul Skeens. Marlins strikeouts. For me, over 6.5 for Paul Skeens against the Marlins feels very attainable, as long as they don't pull any weird crap and pull them after 4 innings or something like that. I think that this is a pretty easy one. Minus 160, the books also expect it to happen. Look who's in the chat, though, Ryan Bloomfield. Bubba, the plus money man, he's going to have to use that one. So make sure we're tuning into Bubba in the Bloom so we can hear Ryan use Bubba's new nickname. My second bet, Kyle Hendricks, over 2.5 earned runs. He's facing the Dodgers, and they set it at 2.5. I would have thought this one when I went to check. I was like, it's going to be at 3.5. It's going to be too high. If Kyle Hendricks doesn't allow 3 earned runs against the Dodgers, then there's something wrong with the Dodgers lineup because he is beyond cooked. There's no need for Kyle Hendricks to be pitching at this point. He is simply doing it because the Cubs are desperate for starters with Justin Steele going down against the Dodgers. I think this is a very easy one. And then I mentioned him before, Tyler McGill, and Ryan is another in the chat if he's still there. Another Tyler McGill guy going back for years. We've been fans of his, but Vladimir Guerrero over 1.5 total bases at plus money still feels like a very good bet. Vlad has cooled off a little bit over the last couple of weeks, and that's only been a 335 batting average. So I think that there's still a very good chance that he is able to get a couple bases tonight against Tyler McGill. So just to recap, Paul Skeens over 6.5 strikeouts, Kyle Hendricks over 2.5 earned runs, Vlad Guerrero over 1.5 bases. And for Bubba, Pete Crow Armstrong over 0.5 runs, Luis Robert over 1.5 total bases, and Cody Bellinger also over 1.5 total bases. All of those are available with our friends at Bet365. Again, use that promo code, guys. Get yourself some free goodies as we enter into the final few weeks of the season. Bubba, one last thing to do before we sign off today, and that is the home run call. And I think you've already kind of hinted at who you're going to go with today.
Yeah, it was almost belly bombs, but we're going with Lou Bob taking Cantillo deep. It's I think it's a big day for Lou Bob, and the White Sox might actually, they've scored 7 runs on Sunday. They might do it for the first time. I'm just guessing first time all season in back-to-back games. It should be a good game for Chi-Town.
I'm going with my most niche home run call of the season here. People are going to laugh at me, but I'm going with Danny Jansen. And the reason is because Danny Jansen destroys left-handed pitching. It has been a bit tough for him recently, but against Cade Povich, a guy who has struggled quite a bit throughout his first go-around in the big leagues. I know he destroyed the White Sox last week. Bubba and I could probably shut down the White Sox on a given day, so I'm not reading too much into that Cade Povich start. I am thinking Danny Jansen getting back in the lineup tonight is going to take one over the Green Monster against Cade Povich, so that is my home run call for the day. Bubba, any final thoughts here before we sign off?
No, just good luck to everybody. Saw a lot of championship week stuff going on in the chat. If you guys have any questions, hit me up on Twitter. I'll try to help you out before your locks and everything. But other than that, no, my friend, I'll actually see you in a few hours. And we'll do this all over again. Different format, same bat time, different bat channel.
If you're not sick of us, then go check us out. You'll find the links over Twitter at BDentric for Bubba, at Joe Orico99 for myself. And we'll be back again on Wednesday. This is a full Joe and Bubba week. Like we mentioned earlier, Welsh was supposed to be on, but football commitments, week 1 and everything, it does get in the way this time of year. So going to be a lot of Joe and Bubba going forward. If you guys like what you're hearing, please leave a rating and review on the podcast. Subscribe wherever you're listening. If it's on the YouTube side, if it's on the podcast side, really helps those numbers to stay steady throughout the offseason. And we are going to have fantasy baseball content coming at you, whether it's Welsh to Dynasty stuff. I got a couple ideas. I'm sure Bubba will do some stuff. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be going on, so make sure you guys are subscribed. But that will do it, guys. For Casey, Bubba, I am Joe Rico. We will see you on Wednesday. Everybody, have yourselves a great day.